Thank you very much, Luis, for this introduction. So my name is Katya Lysova, and I'm an anti-bribery lawyer and a compliance professional at Trace International, which is the US-based anti-bribery business association. Let me see, here I go. Trace International. We are based in Maryland, the US, and our mission, our goal is to support global companies, global organizations, and their intermediaries in their compliance efforts. And we're working specifically on anti-bribery and anti-corruption. We have a couple of hundreds of global companies, our members. We share resources on anti-bribery compliance with them, and also we provide a number of due diligence services to the intermediaries of these global companies. First of all, I'd like to mention that, again, Luis already mentioned all these global consequences of unethical behavior, and unethical often is illegal. It's human trafficking, it's various human rights violations and environmental concerns and violations, but also it's the issue of bribery and corruption. So bribery, what are the main risks for businesses? The first one is economic disadvantage. Basically, not the one who is competent and professional wins, but those who pays the way through. The second one is the personal risk. Those who are involved in bribery are not really sure about safety, and we have a number of cases when people who are involved in these kind of actions, then it's really hard to pull back. Finally, business risks. Basically, any transactions or these kind of corrupt exchanges, they are unenforceable. You pay a bribe, you never know whether you actually get something in return, even though it was promised to you. You're never certain what will happen. And next time, if you begin this bribery exchange, you offer something, whoever you're paying may come back and ask for more, and then for more, and then for more. How would you stop that? Especially if that person in a position of power. So these are very tricky situations. It's a very slippery road to take in the first place. And finally, we all know, again, you're financial executives of business, you know that bribery leads to increased cost of goods. And who is paying? Usually the poorest of the poor, who actually carry the burden of the bribery. So the one thing is that I would like you to take away from this, my presentation, this session, is that anti-bribery enforcement is on the rise globally. Not only in the US, even though US is the leader, but many other countries and developing countries are increasingly prosecuting and investigating bribery, not just in a global, kind of not within, domestically as well. And as I understand, you are again financial executives, so you're not compliance professionals. Maybe it sounds a little bit new to you. Therefore, I would, and what you're aware of, or the questions you may have, is that, okay, good, we got it. Bribery is bad. We have to avoid it. It's illegal. You have to comply with the law. But now the question is, how would you really balance the fiduciary duty that you have before your shareholders with the social duties, social responsibilities? And it translates to the next question: how can you really perform and achieve high level of performance, but at the same time be compliant? Because, and that was concern of the US companies, when the FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, was enacted in 1977, some of the companies said, listen, we will be really at disadvantage. Some company will continue paying bribes and we're not paying, so we'll definitely be losing. We cannot do that, right? So that was a concern. It didn't substantiate. So actually, again, the OECD enacted convention, and so the countries, the members of OECD followed. So now most of the countries of the European Union have the anti-bribery legislation. But again, there are actually 5 takeaways that I'd like to point your attention to. First one is that doing business ethically is not just possible, but it's profitable. And there are examples of that. The second one is that doing business ethically actually is one of the best risk management strategies, because it's not just you're compliant, but you can account for various risks that your business may face. The third one is that businesses have to be strategic. And in addressing bribery risk, they have to understand that they may incur some losses in the short term. Once they understand that, accept, that would make it much easier to come up with an effective compliance program and follow through. In the longer term, it will bring benefits. And another point is that what we see, what the businesses are doing in various industries, that they kind of join forces in collective actions. Because businesses are saying, all right, we're not paying bribes, but the foreign government officials are still demanding those bribes. And in some situations, you cannot say no. So what do you do in that situation? So there are some actions to address the demand side of bribery. And it's easier to do when it's done collectively by various players in the industry, not just by you alone standing and saying, I'm not paying and everyone else is paying. So this is the collective action approach, which, again, is proven to be very effective. And in terms of history of the CPA, you know how it was born. In 1977, but before that, during the Watergate investigation, it turned out that there were some slush funds in American US companies that were used specifically for paying foreign government officials to obtain and retain business. And after that, more than 400 companies admitted to paying bribes to foreign government officials. And that's when the Congress decided, oh, yeah, we need to do something about that. And that's how the law was born. All right, this is just a short overview of some of the issues we've heard. There are principles of transparency, of honesty, of fair competition. So it's in everyone's interest to be transparent and to adhere to clean business practices. Of course, there are a number of laws. You know that in your jurisdictions, there are these laws. Where I come from the US, we have the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, there's a UK Bribery Act. These are two major acts. Why they're so, kind of, everyone talks about that, because they have an extraterritorial jurisdiction. And therefore, it may affect not just the US persons, but also foreign companies, foreign entities, and individuals. So now, I'm sure you're aware that your companies actually have the code of conducts and anti-bribery policies that ban corrupt payments, bribery, and facilitation payments. There are other things like slave labor and so on. So I'm not talking about here because I'll just focus on anti-bribery, but I want you to be aware of other aspects of ethical behavior. And I wanted to pay attention to this one trend, which is number 3 on the last one on my slide, growing CSR responses. So this is one of the things when you're doing business abroad in some challenging jurisdiction, and some foreign government officials is asking you to provide some help to him personally. So what some companies are doing, of course, they're completely, the first thing you have to do, you have to refuse. Say no, and there are strategies of doing it. And if you go on our website, traceinternational.org, you can actually see the tips and tools of how to refuse paying bribes that have proven to be effective. But the other way to say, no, we're not paying to you. What we can do, we can support the community instead. Benefits of doing business ethically. It's legal. It's legal, it's compliant. You avoid being punished like Alstom that settled with the DOJ and SEC in 2014 for $772 million. So it's a huge amount of money paid for anti-bribery violation. And you hear about the case about the FCP enforcement, which is on the rise. And again, it's not going to slow down. Again, being ethical actually helps you to avoid ambiguity, uncertainty, and delays, which I mentioned before. It increases loyalty within your organization, because if you are honest towards your partners, towards counterparts, towards people in other jurisdictions, people would respect you more within the organization as well. You have more business opportunities, because global companies right now who have very stringent, very robust compliance programs, not just required to work, to check their partners in the whole supply chain, do due diligence on every counterpart. They are demanding that their partners adhere to clean and transparent business practices. So you have more business opportunities if you can actually demonstrate that you are compliant. And finally, it benefits society at large, not just those foreign government officials who get this, bribes. And finally, that's my last slide. So no one says it's easy. There are, of course, challenges of doing business ethically. And the challenges come from that it's reasonably new, or relatively new. Again, FCPA was adopted in 1977. The UK Bribery Act was adopted in just 2011, a couple of years ago. So all this legislation is relatively new, and we know how hard to change the perceptions. That's what business as usual. We all, facilitation payment here, $30, there, $50, who cares, right? So these are bribes. These are types of small bribes, and they're illegal. They're illegal here, and they're illegal there, in those jurisdictions. Those government officials who are accepting bribes, small or large, they are criminally liable. They can go to prison for accepting money. Of course, everyone wants to keep everything in secret, right? So as long as, if you are not protesting, and if you're compliantly paying bribes, that's in kind of everyone's interest, right? So it's not business as usual. Accepting and paying bribes is no longer acceptable. And it's not, I don't see how it's going to change in any time soon. It requires commitment from the top. So the shareholders, the CEOs, CFOs, all the top management should come up with a strong message on ethical behavior and compliant and practices that are compliant with the different laws, including anti-bribery. You have to have stringent policies. You have to train people. You have to educate people, inform them what that means, what they cannot do and what they can do. You have to have strong internal controls. These are all the expectations of the enforcement authorities. If ever there is a question, they'll be checking each of these boxes, whether you have those programs in place. In risk-based due diligence, of course, whenever you're doing business with someone, what is expected from you as a business, as a responsible business, you have to do due diligence on your third parties, on your partners in joint ventures. Because you cannot say, I didn't know. You should have known. You should have checked. Show me what you've done. Again, be ready for potential setbacks. You incur some losses in the beginning because you'll be refusing to pay and someone will still continue doing it. But there are whistleblowers. There are competitors who can go and complain, right? So it's not a closed market anymore. You may never know. Your employees may go and complain. So you have to be not out of fear of persecution, of enforcement, but out of genuine commitment to true ethical values, just to comply with the laws. Collective actions, that's what I mentioned before, may be required. So I think that's it on my part, and I'll be ready to answer any questions if any of you may have. And just go on our website and you can check any information you may have. Thank you so much.